Well done. It's almost 15 minutes to 4, and I've come to the place where I'm going to be reading this week's installment of Ezekiel Kralen's story that's usually about the two little dogs, but this is about the eviction proceedings and the legal adventure and so on. And this particular chapter is titled, It Pays to be Poor. Ezekiel Kralen wrote. Email correspondence, April 13th to the 15th. Subject, latest meetup with Deke was awesome, continued. Date, April 13th, nighttime. Later that afternoon when I returned to my building and laid out a blanket for the mutts with a large cardboard box they could rest in if they chose, Bose exited the front gate and flashed a grin at us. He's not just another resident, but the USPS Amazon deliveryman who knows which unit I live in, thanks to a brief conversation we had last week. Both mutts were tucked into a blue sleeping bag when he spotted us, their schnozzles poked out with Lucky's head plunked down upon his sister's butt. Sorry, lost my place. Well, I scritched his ears. I smiled back at Bose, then he took off for his daily jog dressed in bright blue spandex shorts that reached almost down to his knees, and a yellow windbreaker. Now get this, Watson. Earlier that day, and before Deke had departed, the building manager opened the front gate and stepped out, I think perhaps for the first time since returning from the hospital. Severely bent over and wobbly, the emaciated, prickless prick scuttled several feet beyond the gate and seated himself at the nearest outdoor super-duper chair. He was the personification of death warmed over, but with an extra touch of crustiness. The pup's master and I were talking, his back turned to Kevin, who sat 10 feet away. My eyes were averted from Deke's face as I noticed the manager, head hung so low he couldn't see me gazing at him. Curious to discover what caught my rapt attention, Deke glanced back, then turned to me and blurted, "There's the manager spying on us again." I don't think Kevin heard that. I almost fell to the sidewalk in laughter, but restrained myself. Sometime after Deke went off to run his errands, I was about to take their empty food bowls inside when, right at that moment, Kevin stood back up and proceeded to enter the gate, so I decided to hold off until I wouldn't have to encounter him as I walked upstairs. I knew it would be a while, 10 minutes at least, before he managed to reach the second floor. So I sat back down with the pups and bided my time. Once I decided enough minutes had passed, I stepped inside and returned hovel. But when I descended back down to the lobby just a few minutes later, there he was, standing by the gate again, looking like he was about to enter. So I held the gate open for him and said, "I thought you just went upstairs, Kevin." He mumbled something about just going to the utility room for a moment, which is situated right by the first landing. So as he entered and I exited, I retorted, "You sure get around." And he chuckled. If he only knew what I have in store for him, I don't think he would have laughed. The only disappointing part of that day was when I discovered Lucky doesn't like the soft milk-bone biscuits I bought 2 days ago, though his sister can't get enough. I feel so bad offering bits of it to him only to see him reject it every time, while Flacco gets to gobble up his share. I have since corrected this unspeakable doggy tragedy by purchasing those jerky treats they both enjoy so much. This morning, honestly, good physician, I can't bear the thought of putting Lucky through that again, even though it dings an unwelcome dent in my budget. His sister, so one of the dogs is a boy and one of the dogs is a girl. Something looked wrong there. Flacco gets to gobble up his share. I see. Flacco gets to gobble up Lucky's share. Okay, Flacco is the girl. To continue, sorry. Now let's get back to the Brahmin cow as a good omen, as you suggested. The sweet beast appeared shortly before my surprise second lawsuit at that mini-county fair on Noe Street, thus gave me a warm burst of kindness to cheer me on, as she knew before I did what was about to be dumped upon my shoulders. In addition, by not helping me, as I think they should, Magdalena, the Golden Gate Bar legal assistants for the elderly, the San Francisco Law Library, Mr. Wasserman, and so on, are giving me a gift to fend for myself under most difficult odds, and thus gaining, as a result, in the long run, a much stronger sense of self-empowerment and a potentially joyful spirit. In other words, they set me up to become the hero in this scenario where I save the dogs' lives along with my own. I look forward to the day when I can tell Deke all about this adventure, how I was fighting for his Poochie's lives while he never had a clue. Subject: one more thing about the answer form. Date: April 13th, later nighttime. You cannot write down the specifics as to why you oppose one or more allegations. You can only fill in a box with a number for each allegation you deny that is listed in the complaint, so no attachment worries. However, the plaintiff's attorney won't know what my reasons are by reading my answer. That will come out during mediation, or perhaps prior to that when both attorneys are required to discuss the plans for mediation 1 or 2 weeks before it occurs. And as you already know, one of those attorneys is me. Not so bad after all. Date: April 14th. Watson wrote, "Okay, pretty good. Phew." I replied, all they had to say, they meaning the GG Bar, my eviction attorney, Mr. Wasserman, SF Law Library, Nolo Books, and so on, was, if you get a lawyer, they'll just tell the plaintiff attorney you're judgment proof anyway, so just go tell him yourself. And that's why no free legal service for the poor handles personal injury cases, because the poor are always judgment proof. And my concern about the false allegations going on record do not, because being judgment proof is not the same thing as failing to answer the summons and getting a default win for the plaintiff. So like DJ Trump, I could shoot anyone on Market Street and get away with it because I'm judgment proof. Yay. Well, that's not quite true, but you get the gist, Watson. So that's all anyone had to say, but no one did. And why do you think that is? The Golden Gate Bar knew, my eviction attorney knew, they all knew. So that's the script. They were putting me through some sort of test or initiation to see how I'd deal with the faux crisis and how I'd come up smelling like a rose eventually. And in so doing, through the ordeal, I'm a better primate for it. They're all in on it, including the plaintiff and the building manager, and must be having a sonorous guffaw right now over how well they've tricked me. I guess you've read my email to the plaintiff's attorney by now. Splendiferously hilarious, wouldn't you say? Signed, Zeke K. Holmes. P.S. Judgment proof. Do you get it now? It was my very own judgment day, and I have been deemed innocent. This is a classic bodhisattva caper. First the setup, where you start freaking out, then the resolution that arises from my own desperate effort to redeem myself, and finally my victorious ascension into the state of consciousness known by some as nirvana. Nirvana. Pleasant dreams. Subject: Terry Pterodactyl's prediction was correct. Date: April 15th. Isn't that amazing, Watson, the proto-bird's reassurance that came to me late at night in an overwhelming rush of goodwill, that a positive outcome to my present woes would occur within days, came true 1 week to the day since that lovely visitation, and here I am now, sitting on top of the world, and as if to seal the prophecy, later that morning I stepped out from my Rosenberg's brew, and lo and behold, that glorious Brahman cow appeared before me, like a vision of Krishna in disguise. The full endorphin rush has yet to kick in after such a drawn-out ordeal of 17 angst-ridden, exhausting days, but I'm already feeling pretty damn good, and I sense it will take another 2 or 3 days to reach that euphoric peak, which will then gently diminish over an equal span of time. And Deke has kindly respected my wish to be left alone to my struggles on Thursday and Friday. I actually told him he can show up after 6 p.m. either day and even drop by in the morning before 10 for a few minutes if need be, but he didn't do either. I am surprised, however, that he hasn't shown up at all today, which is Saturday. Be that as it may, here's another wee example of his improved behavior of recent vintage. Usually Deke acts upset whenever he sees me looking out my window, as if I'm spying on him. As if. I like to look outside and get some fresh air every 20 minutes or so. Nothing to do with my Cajun pest. But what am I supposed to do because he chooses to park his butt smack dab below my window, stay concealed in my own hovel like a frightened witness protection victim? At any rate, he seems to be less anxious about this in recent days. As in several nights ago, while he was preparing to depart, he saw me looking down at him, smiling. Instead of acting offended, he grinned back and signaled I should come down now, because he's ready to go, and I need to collect the sleeping bag and cardboard I laid out for the pups. When I stepped out, I explained why I was smiling at him from my window. It's your speaker. You have it tricked out like it's wearing panties at both ends. Hilarious. For, you see, Watson, he had taken 2 wide strips of a flowery bedsheet and wrapped each portion around opposite ends of the weighty oblong speaker he had secured atop the bicycle with bungee cords. Now, wishing you a lovely night filled with sweet dreams and furry companions, I remain, as always, your devoted friend down south, Zeke K. Holmes. To be continued.